This guy's like standing in front of all this stuff, and he's got a smile on his face, and he's talking about land use. Bro, do I have to sue CNN?
I don't know, do you?
They're making shit up. They keep saying I'm taking horse dewormer. I literally got it from a doctor.
When a so-called woke guest tried to corner Joe Rogan, let's just say it blew up in their face. Miserably. Because here's the thing, stepping into Joe's studio with weak arguments is like you're basically signing up for public humiliation.
There was some book about the Kamala Harris campaign where they talked about her getting on this show. And they said a bunch of things that weren't true. Look at the far end of that graph, and you see we're in a cooling period.
And today, we're unpacking every meltdown, media spin, and ego crash that went down when people thought they could outsmart Joe on his own turf.
I was really only sick for a day, and then 5 days later I was negative.
So, here's how it went down. It was 2021. Rogan had just revealed he caught COVID and was prescribed ivermectin by his doctor. And CNN pounced with the narrative that he was gulping down horse paste. The headlines practically wrote themselves, and they thought they had him boxed in.
Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying?
Then Sanjay Gupta, CNN's chief medical correspondent, strolls into Rogan's studio, all smiles, clearly thinking this would be a polite little PR chat. Joe didn't waste a second. He leaned across the table and hit him with the hammer. Your network lied. Outright lied. Why?
We should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you too. They're lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing. That's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
Gupta froze, stammered, tried to find a safe corner to retreat to, but there wasn't one. Joe never raised his voice, never let the pressure off, and just kept drilling until Gupta finally broke with the line that said it all. Yeah, they shouldn't have said that. Here's where it gets hilarious. Adam Conover walked into Rogan's studio thinking he was about to drop some grand lecture on fairness and inclusivity in sports.
Gender, right? That is a sporting world that I'm more interested in, right? And I think we should find a way to make that happen. I know it's gonna be really complicated and messy, right?
Instead, what he actually did was showcase the art of defending a position with nothing but slogans and vibes. From the jump, he acted like gender divisions in athletics were just outdated relics, brushing aside decades of biological science like it was some dusty rulebook. And then came the jaw dropper. Mid-conversation, Adam just flat out admitted he wasn't an expert.
And I'm not an expert on that, and I don't want to claim to be, right?
Seriously, he's passionately defending a controversial stance, and in the same breath says, I'm not an expert. You can't make this stuff up. That's like calling yourself a lawyer, then confessing you don't know the law.
Women are hardwired to be attracted to confident, athletic men.
Now here's where Rogan does what Rogan does best. He leaned in and dropped the one question that shattered the whole performance. Do biological males who transition still hold physical advantages? Boom. No spin, no soft landing, just straight up reality. And Adam? He froze.
You don't think that women look at like pro athletes and like big, strong, athletic men, and you don't think they're drawn to that for evolutionary reasons?
Then Rogan hit him with real-world examples. Trans athletes smashing records in women's sports. Facts on the table. The confidence drained from Adam's face, and the debate was over before he even realized he'd lost. Adam's meltdown wasn't a one-off either. Later, that Matt Walsh came in, Rogan pulled the exact same thread.
They're pro-women's rights, they're on the left, and they're not anti-trans, but then all of a sudden this is getting imposed into their world, and they're told they have to accept it.
Fairness in women's sports, and the woke talking points collapsed just as fast. Walsh tossed out his hardline takes on gender, but Rogan didn't just nod along. He leaned in, pressing him with the kind of blunt, real-world questions woke arguments crumble under. And hey, if you're enjoying watching these woke arguments collapse in real time, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Because trust me, the next roast makes this one look polite. Then came Joy Behar, swinging from the sidelines on The View with the wild claim that Joe Rogan believes in dragons. Yep, that was her big gotcha moment.
I was trying to say that I believe in dragons.
Wait, what is this? I just
She
heard
said,
about
I
it.
checked it. I checked it. And the lady goes, did you double check this? She goes, I checked it. He believes in dragons.
Should be like,
you think they lived
Sasquatch,
alongside of
bitch.
people? Like, it's so much cooler if there were. Right. And like, the fact that we know that pterodactyls did exist, that's cool.
Right.
It would be way cooler as if they existed with people.
Right, 2,000 years ago.
Why
Yeah.
is that?
Except Rogan never said that. He talked about ancient myths and giant lizards inspiring folklore. But Joy twisted it into, Joe thinks fire-breathing beasts lived with humans. Rogan rolled the tape, proved she flat out lied, and the internet torched her harder than any dragon ever could. Buckle up, because Gavin Newsom managed to turn wildfire ruins into his own stage show.
Speculators coming in and talking about what to do with the land of all these homes that have been burnt down while it's still only 6% contained. And he did this little dance like, I've been talking with these, with the governor of Hawaii about what to do. We got some ideas. A speculator, we're gonna have some meetings. Like, he's doing
Really?
this- Oh,
Families were still watching their homes burn, kids' photos and heirlooms reduced to ash, and there he was, grinning, shrugging his shoulders, talking about speculators like it was open mic night. Rogan pulled the clip and ripped it apart. The creepy smile, the fake phone calls, the whole act. Instead of fixing empty reservoirs or clearing brush, Newsom's playbook was pure theater. California burns, but hey, at least the governor's got his dance moves down. Strap in, Bernie Sanders walked straight into a buzzsaw when Rogan dropped climate receipts.
You got to deal with this climate change issue. And I know that, there are some people who think climate change is a hoax. It ain't a hoax. I think the last 10 years have been the warmest on record.
Bernie started with his usual stump speech. Climate change is the biggest crisis, the warmest years on record, millions of green jobs. The greatest hits.
Earth's temperature has never been static, right? We could both agree on that. It's always been up and down. There's been ice ages and heat waves. And then the Washington Post looked at it. What was the time period that they looked at? That essentially they found that we're in a cooling period. Scientists have captured the Earth's climate change over the last 485 million years. Here's a surprising place we stand now. So look at the far end of that graph, and you see we're in a cooling period.
But here's where it got spicy. Rogan didn't just nod along like a CNN anchor. Nope. He pulled out a Washington Post graph that showed Earth's long-term climate swings and, boom, pointed out we're actually in a cooling period. Bernie's face? Priceless. He hadn't even read the study. And Rogan wasn't done. He drilled him on China being the top polluter, the mountains of cash tied up in green emergencies, and the sheer hypocrisy of politicians flying private jets to climate summits while scolding everyone else about carbon. It wasn't a debate. It was a slow, surgical demolition. Here's the kicker. Kamala Harris didn't even have to step in Rogan's studio to get exposed.
There was some book about the Kamala Harris campaign where they talked about her getting on this show. And they said a bunch of things that weren't true. They talked to, supposedly talked to like 150 different people about her.
Trump's team booked the podcast in one shot. No scripts, no edits, no drama. Meanwhile, Kamala's camp stalled, demanded strict time limits, and wanted a polished PR setup instead of a real conversation.
So that they could be in Texas to do my show. They never agreed to do the show. None of that's true.
Rogan called their bluff on air. He laid it out plain. She never committed, her team made excuses, and the whole, "We were in Texas for your show" line, total fiction. He exposed every excuse one by one until the whole act collapsed. Just when it seemed like only pundits and comics were lining up for the firing squad, in walks Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna.
This is all Chinese money now going to a separate cause, and this one specifically is on the Israel versus Palestine issue. They don't care about Israelis or Palestinians.
She strolled into Rogan's studio with what she clearly thought was a bombshell, blaming immigrant protests on Chinese money. Yeah, because obviously a bunch of construction workers standing outside Home Depot are all secret agents on Beijing's payroll. Rogan didn't let that nonsense breathe for a second.
Right. I mean, it was a visceral reaction that a lot of people had. The idea of people just showing up and pulling people out of schools and pulling people out of Home Depot and pulling people that were.
He leaned in and hit her with reality. Most of the people locked up by ICE don't even have criminal records. So, who exactly are you going after day laborers trying to feed their families? The more she tried to spin it, the worse it got. Her talking points evaporated under the weight of one simple fact. Scapegoating immigrants might work in sound bites, but in a real conversation, it's just cruel and stupid.
They don't want to stop the illegal immigration because they need cheap labor.
And then came one of Rogan's most savage riffs, the R-word roast. While the woke mob was busy banning words like it fixes society, Rogan cut straight through the nonsense. Rogan wasn't having it. He flat out said the culture war over the word wasn't about kindness, it was about control. The audience loved it because Rogan said what everyone else was thinking. Censoring language doesn't fix anything, it just proves who's holding the leash. So the real question is, why do they keep trying, Joe, if they know they're going to fold?